Thank you very much. Thank you for that generous introduction. Shani is going to be joining us from rural Tanzania, and he's had some connectivity issues. So as soon as he joins us, he might be here. It looks like he's joining us just in time. Shani, perfect timing. Hi, Nubaea, welcome.
Yes.
We were just introduced.
Alyssa, nice to see you.
Hi, so nice to see you. We were just introduced and I was getting ready to start our presentation, but if you would like to start the presentation, then I will come in on my portion.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm really
So
excited being here.
on the screen, Shani, you can just advance where it says next slide. Can you see that?
Oh,
I can do for you if
okay,
you
yeah. You can do for me, please. It's
Okay,
gonna be
sure.
helpful.
Can you see the
Yeah,
presentation?
yeah, I
Yeah,
see.
perfect.
Beginnings.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so
Okay,
we already
go
were
on.
introduced, so I'll let you
Okay.
introduce yourself and then I will advance the slide when you tell me.
Yeah. As everybody knows me, my name is Shani Mangola. I'm a LLM holder, human rights attorney, and biological anthropologist research based in Tanzania. Also, I'm a director of Online Community Fund. Right now, I'm working as a lawyer in a Mbulu district. I can say thank you, God. Finally, I got a job from the government to represent my people, and that is my dream work and also the dream work of my sister Alyssa. I hope she'll be excited when I got this job. And I've been working with my sister Alyssa for more than 20 years, and she's been my mentor, and she helped me a lot in my journey, especially my educations. And she's been there with me. She's been there with the Hadza, and she'll be there always with the Hadza through Olanakwe Community Fund, and also she'll be there with the Hadza through different ideas. Every time I come up with this idea, she's been with me and like to advise me to take it in next level. Yeah, and also a big cooperative with her, since we started doing research concerned about indigenous people, especially Hadzabe tribe in Tanzania. We've been working with the different papers and been working with different kind of the research concerned about the anthropologist, biological staff, physical staff. There's also been a lot of things which we come up with along with a lot of ideas concerned of these incredible people. Uh, Hadzabe tribes. So yeah, here's outlines. I hope my sister we already mentioned the title of our topic, or I can go direct. Yeah, here's the outlines of participant communities. I name Hadzabe. Yeah, this is one big. We conduct research concern about microbiomes. The idea is about ethical manners. How we're going to conduct research in the proper ways. How the Hadza, or not only Hadza, how the others, the different communities are going to perceive the research. So in this research, most of the time when we conduct this research, we organize with the Hadza together, and we come up with these ideas and then there are most of them the participant of this research in general. And also we come up with these other hunter gatherers and microbiomes. This has been kind of new things about me, because when I did the research first time about these issues, a lot of Hadza they come up with these different ideas. What's going on, what happens. But finally we told them to what's important of this research. And we find out through those research, the Hadza people, they have thousands of the microbiomes within the bacteria within their guts. And most of them they have no ideas about what's those research conducted and how we have those thousand ideas, and then they come up with this idea that we need the people to come back and tell us what happens. And we come up with this idea that we need to make an incredible and very crucial paper to tell the scholars about how we're going to conduct proper research when we go to do some research concerned about the hunter gatherers communities. And also the the dangerous of, and also we come up with the Hadzabe or Hadza, and the people are the communities of 1,300 residing in northern Tanzania, East Africans. And also the diet is the wild, farmed, and processed food. Yeah, of course, as we know that it's not only Hadza people, they just eating the bush food, they also they eating the processed food from the not from the industry, by the way, they got from the villages, and also they eat it, and also in a variable amount of dependence on a distance to a village or a city. Yeah, especially for living in a bush. Also, they're depending much to eat food from the bush. Also, they're exchanging maize, corn, maize, beans with a people, but no wild animals. That's historically. The hearts of people we've been living in that way of life since the beginning of this world up to nowadays. Although there are some changes happens, some of them they already went to school, others they are still in school. Some of them also they travel, some of them they've been in America, you yeah, see how much we be diversity ourselves gradual. Some of them they're still foragings. The others they are still doing small farmings, small scale farmings, especially like going to down the Chini valleys, like Mongomono and also the Manga. And then some of them they're still living in their everyday lifestyles, like huntings, gatherings, and chatter. So it's not like 100% the Hadza people, they are like depending huntings from the bush. Oh no, some of them they are still, buy some food from the villagers. Some of them they're still huntings, collecting berries, tubers, honey, and etc. Yeah, I can. Yeah, here are they. I can recognize some of them. My late uncle, my nephew, also my niece. Yeah, I see them. And also this is the African map. It was only the place where we're gonna get or we're gonna find the Hadza people is Tanzania, as you see the map of the Tanzania down there. Next slide. Hadza are iconic hunter-gatherers, of course. They're unique. The one of the first and lasting hunter-gatherers here in Africa and also in East Africa. They're still living in a way of living. This is the very important work they have in their entire life. Even if some of them are still doing others, but they're still, when they come back home, they're still hunting and as well. The population coverage of the Hadzabe depict the communities as Stone Age or ancient peoples living in a modern world. Visited annually by the thousands of tourists, researchers, reporters, aides, and workers. Central to microbiome and also rewindings of the movements. Next slide.
All right, thank you, Shani. Okay, we're going to go back and forth, but I'll be taking over from this point. Thank you so much. So I think the most important part for me to go off of is the short summary of the community we work with, and because we are limited on time, we're going to move into sort of the first part of our argument. So microbiomania is something I'm sure that everyone here today is very familiar with. It's essentially the fervor in which microbiomes are lauded in popular media and scientific press and in a lot of health outlets as well, as capable of revolutionizing human health. This concept is really central to the way that hunter-gatherers as indigenous communities are really addressed in the literature and in scientific approaches to investigation. Importantly, the concept of rewilding is one that is central to this argument. So essentially, the concept of rewilding, you can see a screenshot there, to return to a more natural or wild state, often thought of as ancestral, depending on the outlet in which you're reading, the process of essentially undoing domestication. So we know that one approach is restoring the gut microbiome to its quote unquote ancestral state, which often is implied as a healthier state. You can do this ostensibly by looking through popular media approaches, and even in scientific publications by, for example, eating more fiber, taking probiotics, or engaging in other types of interventions or therapies. Some of the radical examples, of course, are fecal transplant. There's also the proposed reintroduction of quote unquote missing microbes to realign our GM with our evolved environment, because we only have a very short period of time. This is actually one whole aspect of the research that we've been doing over a number of years. So we can talk about that perhaps in the question and answer period. That tends to be the one that is most relevant to the Hadzabe. But just to give you a big sort of 10,000 foot overview of the concept and how it relates to the community. So the Hadzabe are central to this rewilding movement. This is just a small sample from the internet that Shani and I have been pulling for a number of years. The one on the upper right, should you follow the Hadzabe diet, is from the Hindustan Times. There are examples of a scientist in the field giving himself a fecal transplant with Hadzabe feces to try a hunter-gatherer microbiome. There was a very popular radio series in the UK called Rewild Your Gut, the Hadzabe Experiments with Tim Spector. This is, you get the idea. This is just a few examples of the movement that we've been investigating and we've been working with the community to sort of address. So there are several dangers of rewilding. The two that we'll be just covering very briefly in the amount of time we have left is that first, the concept is scientifically inaccurate. And secondly, it's harmful to participant communities. So the first one, in terms of it being scientifically inaccurate, there are a lot of images. There's a lot of graphical representations that I could have used. I chose this one for brevity, but it's a pretty clean and clear-cut differentiation between lifestyle and dietary characteristics. If you go from hunter-gatherers to, for example, settled agriculturalists, to the third category, which essentially is industrialized communities. And you see on the far left with hunter-gatherers, you see only wild foods, you see a mobile lifestyle, you see with the agriculturalists, you see settlement, access to antibiotics, you see domesticated foods, and then we all know what the industrialized cartoon imagery looks like. The problems here are several, but the first one I will use to say it is not that straightforward. And we have pictures of my colleague, my friend, my co-presenter, Shani, there to the right, to demonstrate how inaccurate this is. The top picture is Shani in his traditional dress. The bottom is also Shani when he received his master's degree at the University of Arizona in Tucson. Both of these are the same person. This person occupies both of those spaces. Shani is here with us today. There are several reasons why this is not necessarily accurate to think about the Hadzabe or any hunter-gatherers as being in or closer to our ancestral state. So while they may have lifestyle that has elements that may be closer to some of our ancestral lifestyle components, they certainly are not analogs. And this is highly problematic for a variety of reasons. There are environmental differences, climate, geography, available resources have changed over millennia, many lifestyle changes, factors such as diet, social structures, interactions with other communities. We know that there are genetic adaptations that modern hunter-gatherers have undergone over thousands of years that have influenced their microbiome. And we know that even groups that are living fairly remotely are influenced by things such as access to antibiotics. We have There have been mobile clinics working with the Hadza since the 1960s. They've had access to antibiotics and biomedicine since the 1960s. That's just one example. We have a lot of, I'll move to the next slide to show you. There are many political and economic changes that have impacted the landscape over the past 100 years. They are certainly not a Stone Age community with an ancestral microbiome. What you see here is the far left, a picture of a Hadza gentleman eating wild honey, Apis mellifera, so killer bee honey. But what you also see is a local Tanzanian paper in the middle indicating that due to climate change, we have a severe shortage of honey. And so the minister has now ordered beehives to be sent to the Hadza community annually. So both of these things are true. While wild honey is still being consumed, you also have members of the community who are now keeping beehives. I encourage you for a big, broad sort of overview of the changes that are impacting the community. I encourage you to read a piece that was done in Science a number of years ago by Ann Gibbons called Hadza on the Brink. It will cover all of this. Also, Shani and I have written about this fairly extensively. So it's also in the literature. You can see all sorts of empirical data on the changes the community is undergoing in terms of diet composition and the ecological and political changes facing the community. Last but not least, in terms of the scientific inaccuracy, it is really unclear whether or not the ancestral microbiome is even healthy to begin with. That is a talk in and of itself, and one that I have given in other places. But the idea that the components of the microbiome that lived within our ancestors through most of our existence promoted a long, healthy life. There are many issues with that, and I'm sure paleodemographers would agree with me on that front. So even throwing into question, even if they did have an ancestral microbiome, is that necessarily what we should be aiming for? We know that there are temporal dynamics at play, and of course, plasticity is at play, and that we can have massive amount of significant change in an individual's lifetime based on diet, environment, health status, and exposure. So the part that comes in, one aspect of it being harmful to the community, is that the search for a quote unquote microbial ark, which is one way to put it, can lead to something called biopiracy. So when researchers or research organizations take biological resources, in this case, biological materials from indigenous communities who are participating in a study without official sanction or without the community necessarily understanding how valuable the resource is that they are contributing. This is largely from less affluent countries. It is often with marginalized people. So one way to combat this, essentially, where do we go from here? I'm going to hand it back over to Shani for the last two slides for him to talk about the paper that we recently wrote with colleagues in Nature Microbiology. And very briefly, if you want more detail, please read the paper. You can find it online. But I'm going to pass it back over to Shani for this slide and the next slide.
Okay, thank you very much, my sister Alyssa. I think so this slide, the community-based communities in conclusive research. Here, I think the collaborative interventions that involves the scientific researchers and communities members working together to address challenges affecting the populations, experiencing disparities. Ethical microbiome researcher with indigenous communities. Here, I think we're talking about very crucial collaborative ways between the Hadza or any indigenous peoples, especially when the scientific researchers coming to conduct research. This is what we're talking about. Actionable step to a more ethical microbiome or research. Mandate ethics training and basic knowledge on populations for all members of the research teams, bench and fields. Use accurate, respectful language to describe a participant communities. To develop a cultural appropriate sample collection and protocols, and use a tiered informed concept. Share a result with the participant communities to establish a benefit sharing. That's going to be the final slide. Yeah, benefits in sharing can look many differences in ways. Support educations, supporting the mature AIDS communities, driving initiative, support access to legal representations, collaborate authorship and joining projects. Here are the pictures where we participated in one of the international meetings with my colleagues, which been conducted in Dar es Salaam. Was been very incredible. One of the best meetings concerned about uh, the global globalizations, of connected to the internet and other stuff. How those technologies affecting the Hadzabe people. So we just joined with Tanzanians to participate in that meetings. Also, we're talking about community aids, which we created in US. It's called Olonakwe. Olonakwe means children's in Hadzabe language. Our mission is to support the communities-based educations programs and economic development projects that directly benefit indigenous Hadzabe hunter-gatherers of the Tanzania, East Africans. As you can see the pictures here, there, and here is the thank you for everyone. I think this is the final slide. Thank you very much for us being here. And here I can recognize some of our board members, Tanzanians, research supporters, Hadzabe communities, Kostiak and NIMRs, Tanzanians, Ibra Mabula. This is one of our friends, Audex Mabula, this is Professor Mabula, Victorious Magali, Mika Daudi, and Tudor Peterson, Christian and Nani Peterson, Shopo, this is my young brother, Delali, Anna Filippo, Ruth, Matthias, one of our friends, US, Europeans, researchers, supporters, and Stephens, Shannon, I don't know how to pronounce this name. Shannon, forgive me, please. Justin, Lud, Daniel Bychek, those are my brother. Shout out to him. Michael Cordella, Simone Ramofela, Amanda Henry, and Sarah Tishkov, and also Anne Gibson. Those are our teams. Thank you very much once again.